left you off in 1928. Now 2 years after his marriage had ended. And by the way, they stayed friends. And she was a widow previous, so this was her second marriage. And she was much older than he was. I don't think I mentioned that. I think 16 years.
I never did.
I think it was 16 years. Anyways, 1928. I'm sorry, 1927. Well, the other thing I forgot to mention is that every character, every name has a real significance to his familial origin. Every single name that he uses. Everything from to
Hickman?
I'm sorry?
Hickman? Hickman?
Yes. Right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, right, Erie.
Okay.
Who was Pickman in his family tree, or who was Pickman in relations to him in real life? You know?
Yeah, they were. That was an uncle married into the family, an uncle's family. One of his aunts on his Lovecraft side married Pickmans, and the Pickmans were a very big family in Newport society, and they were the people who brought film to Newport, and the Pickman theaters. And you may have had a Pickman theater where you were from.
Sounds familiar.
They brought film to New England. Anyways, 1927, he started off with finalizing the Dream Quest of the unknown Kadeth. And that book was the book that he said took him all of his breath to write. Now, I've never read the book. I have not a clue what it's about. But I think maybe I should read it. If that's what had happened with Lovecraft. And then he goes on, starting in January, ending in March, writes The Case of Charles Dexter Ward. Again, a person of very big significance, name-wise. And then he continues to write a whole list of novels, and some of them with co-authors. And one of them I need to talk about is Adolphe de Castro, who was a Cuban immigrant and a member of Teddy Roosevelt's Rough Riders. And this guy brought Lovecraft into a new realm of, I would say, a new realm of writing, where it was almost teams fighting against the evil, or evil fighting against the good. That whole thing, because Adolphe de Castro was such a huge personality, like one of his fellow Rough Riders. And then in 1927, he creates the history of necroeconomics and puts it on paper. And as our previous speaker talked about, they still have this organization hosting events. In 1930 alone, between 1930 and 1931, he writes 7 of his longest stories. I don't know what's going on in 1931 for him, but he's at a what he considered his peak. Um, okay.
Ian?
Yes.
Is Miskatonic University based on some... Miskatonic University, is that based on the university in Providence?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, I want to step back a little bit to 1904. And why I'm stepping back to 1904 is because all of this kind of comes back to him in the last portion of his years. And he at the age of 3, he was writing rich poetry. And like I said, he started writing novels at the age of 8. So he was no slouch. But his voracious appetite in chemistry, astronomy, history gave him the ability to add all of that. Gave him the ability to add all that real information he was able to disseminate into all of his books. And by this point in time, he was truly what he believed writing the truth. A truth through fiction. Now, when his grandfather Whipple Phillips had passed, one of the things that he had stated is that, this grandchild of mine may not add up to very much in his life, but will give the world a whole new perspective. Now, that's very odd for a person to say that, kind of sad. So during this period of time, he's also, with his cousin, Robert Howard, still continuously knocking the church. Specifically in the state of Rhode Island, because the largest church by this point in time was, of course, the Catholic Church, because of the huge Catholic influx of immigrants from Portugal, from France, from Poland, and from the Eastern Bloc, what would eventually become the Eastern Bloc.
From French Canadians.
And the Canadians, yeah, the Quebecs. So, anyways, he begins to write a lot of anti-Catholic rhetoric in his journals, the Tribal. And very interestingly enough, also some anti-Semitic rhetoric, which was pushed by his friend Samuel Loveman. Samuel Loveman said, "You should do this." Now, I don't know why he instigated the anti-Semitism within H.P. Lovecraft, but he did. And the funny thing is a lot of his friends by this point in time, by 1930-31, a lot of them were Jews. We had a Jewish revival in the city of Providence in about the start of 1928 until, I would say, until the war ended, where they had Jewish salons and Jewish thinkers would be there doing their thing. And it was the first time that an Ivy League institution hosted Jewish presentations and accepted Jews into the ranks of the Ivy. And Brown University, of course, has always been ahead of all of its fellow brothers and sisters, for that matter, accepting Jews into. Anyways, So his anti-Catholic thing was very big at the time, and a lot of it revolved around his friendship with Harry Whitehead and Zella Bishop, and these folks really really were not anti-Catholics because they didn't like Catholic people. They were anti-Catholics because they didn't like the fact.
Was Whitehead the one that was living in Florida?
Uh-huh.
That's the guy I couldn't think of his name.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wasn't the fact that they disliked Catholic people. They just felt that the religion was overreaching, and that it created a subclass. Okay, so at this time, 1931, he ends up hanging out with Hazel Held. Hazel Held was an heiress, and kind of funny. They were the Held Herald heiress, so she was an heiress to a Herald, which is the newspaper in Boston, and she gave him the ability to get into the structure of getting his stuff. And she did this all on her own, without his knowledge, by the way, to get some of his stuff published for mainstream. Because the salons were falling out of style. People were readying themselves for war. There was there was the Great Depression was going on. There was a lot of other stuff, and art was out. People needed to survive. And this was his most prolific period of time. From 1930 to his death in, I believe, 1936? 1937. He wrote 2,000 articles within the journal format. And his last grouping of books, which come to 30 books, and 12 short story volumes, all in this period of time. His last, and he's also collaborating with Hazel Held, with Harry Houdini. He goes to a number of his performances and gets front row seats to these magical things. He becomes friends with Thomas Waite of the occult. I mean, so lots of things are going on at this period of time for him. And his brief stay in New York City, he meets Duane W. Rimmel, who is the last heir to the Duane fortune that built Gramercy Park. And Duane Rimmel is the one who purchased all of Lovecraft's early works and had them published through the publishing house of Macmillan, which is a London firm, because his mother was the Rimmel family of London, who were married into all of that nonsense. Anyways, Howard died penniless. One suit, his writing tablet. This was in his room at his Barnes house. His writing tablet, a chair, a light, and a table. And the home was no longer in his name because he couldn't afford the taxes. He died absolutely penniless.
Did he kill himself?
Huh?
He killed himself. Was he the Robert E. Howard that wrote the Conan series?
Say that one more time.
Robert E. Howard, who wrote the Conan series, is it the same one you're talking
Yes.
about? He killed himself.
Howard Lovecraft did not kill himself.
No.
His cousin Robert Howard did.
Yes.
Yes. So, anyways, the Lovecraft name comes to an absolute end. He's an only child. But he has many, many cousins on the Phillips side of his family. And, of course, his wife lived until she was 97. His ex-wife lived until she was 97. By the time of her death, she had been on husband number 7. And all of them her husbands of great wit and mind, and not a child of any of those marriages. So, anyways, that ends our biography and I want to thank the Blueberry Patch for hosting this, for them allowing us to host this event here. I'd like to thank in memory Dallas Borough, who just passed recently. And I also like to thank Peter Duffy for allowing this to happen. And also, I'd like to thank Martha Muzzy. No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, I'm drawing a blank. Don't record that. I'd like to thank Martha Muzzy for her great direction and her ability to keep me on task. And I would like to really thank Rob McCabe for coming here and bringing a great story and his ability to act the whole thing out. So anyways, that's that.
What was that?